Would you like a basic explanation of what Power BI is, what it does, how you can use it, how you use it as a developer, how you use it as a consumer? This half hour is me giving my basic, no-nonsense explanation of what Power BI is. Let's go. So Power BI, what is it? Well, let's take a look through here. This little section is just going to give us an overview of what it is, some demonstrations, how it works, how to use it. It's really light on slides. I'm going to get straight into the demos to make sure everybody gets a real sense of this. Where do we start? Well, it all starts with Power BI Desktop. This is a free tool. Anybody can download it from powerbi.com, where you create your reports. And then once you've created your content, you publish it, essentially save, into the cloud version, powerbi.com, where you can then give it to consumers to consume, to share, to interact with the report. Now, the desktop is where you connect to your data, you transform it, you enrich it. The transformation piece is important because nobody's got nice, clean data. Everybody needs to tidy it up in some way. The enriching is where you add calculations and variances and ratios and build your visuals and charts and do some analysis on the data. That's the whole piece that Power BI Desktop is perfect at. Then once you've built your report and you share it, so you put it into the browser, you then share from there, and the browser, the service as it's referred to as, this is where you can have your control over your data. Control who has access, control who can build other reports off the data. You centralize reports so that everybody knows to go to that spot. You can centralize your data so that people connect to that data. So why should you care about Power BI? Well, look, it's just taking over the world. It is a powerful, impressive, user-friendly business intelligence reporting tool with huge amounts of support from the community all around the world. So here's my Power BI desktop file. You essentially start with an empty canvas as if you were opening Excel. It's just an empty canvas and you can add as many pages as you want across the bottom. So I've already done some little bits of setup just for demonstration purposes. But let me just sort of tell you the concept of what I'm about to do. I'm going to build a report using the data from these files. Now, rather than the old school way of opening them all up and copying and pasting the data out, I'm going to use Power BI to suck all the data in from this one folder. So I'm just going to copy this folder path, and then I'm going to go click on this Get Data button. Now, Get Data, you may or may not have heard of a thing called Power Query. This is what the Get Data experience is. It's Power Query, the world's best data washing machine. Clean up your dirty data, get rid of the columns and rows you don't need, join things together, split things apart, flip data around, trim stuff, replace values. All that sort of messy manual work gets replaced by Power Query. So here's the list of all the things you can connect to out of the box, all sorts of things. All sorts of systems. We're just going to connect to a folder. But if you've got a nice SQL database, you can connect to that. If you've got some Excel files, you can connect to those. There's an ever-growing list getting added to every single month. So I'm just going to double-click on Folder, paste my path in, and click OK. It then gives me a list of all the files, and I'm cheating a little bit here that I know all these files are all set up beautifully. So I'm going to go for the combine and load, but normally you'd go combine and transform and probably need to tidy up the files a little bit, tidy up the data. But I'm going to go combine and load. It'll then ask me which sheet from each Excel file do I want to consolidate. If you were tapping into CSV files, it would just pull the data straight in. I'm just going to click on sheet 1. I can even click on it and see a little preview. Here's my data in each file, and right click and say transform or click OK. So my data is now getting pulled in. It's going through each of those Excel files in that folder and consolidating the data. Now this is just one example. Like I say, you can connect straight to a SQL database, you can connect to an individual file, you can connect to all sorts of things. The experience is the same. Now I've skipped the bit where I have to tidy up the data because this is a demo and I don't need to go into that for today, but please learn Power Query. It is an awesome, awesome tool for tidying up your data. So my data is now loaded, and if I pop this window out the side, this sales by month, this is all the data that I just loaded. And if I go to my data view over on the left here and click on the sales by month icon here, all my data for all my different months loaded in. Beautiful. Okay, now I can just start creating some visuals. So I can tick sales amount, and I want to see the sales amount split by customer code. So I tick that as well. And it'll come in as a nice column chart. And I'll just change that to a bar chart to make it a bit easier to read. And we'll just fit this on here. Okay, so there's my little breakdown, and I can go to my paint roller and I can add some data labels. I'm not going to go into, technical stuff about how we're building this. I'm just giving you a quick overview. Right, so I don't want it split by customer code. I want customer name. But my data doesn't have a customer name, it just has a customer code. Now, back in the old days, we'd use VLOOKUPs or index matches or even now XLOOKUPs to, link the name to the code. But you don't have to do that with Power BI. You go into the data view, and I've already loaded a little table of my customers. And I've got a customer code in that table and a customer name. And I've even got customer address and things like this in here. So here's my sales by month table. And rather than doing any VLOOKUPs or XLOOKUPs or any of those sorts of things, I now just hook up my customer code, click and drag, and drop it on customer code. And now you've created a relationship between these two things when this line shows up. So this line is in essence your VLOOKUP, if you want to think of it like that to start with. It works in a very different way, but just as conceptually. Okay. So there's my first point. Now I've got a similar thing for product code. I want to link that up to my product table. So I can get my product name and maybe my product grouping and other things like this. These lines could represent the equivalent of millions and millions of VLOOKUP type formulas. This is where the data model is really powerful. This thing is called the diagram view, the model view. And this whole piece is about data modeling, connecting up your data. Right, and then I'll just do date and I'll hook that up to my calendar table that I built earlier. This allows me to slice and dice my report by year, by month, by financial year, by financial month, by financial quarter, by country, by product. It's all the things you slice and dice your reports by. These are called your lookup tables or dimension tables. Again, not a technical overview, just a brief introduction. What does it mean? Okay, what it means is this. I can now go back in here and say, right, I don't want customer code anymore. So get rid of that. Tick this over here on the side. I can now go to my customer table and tick customer name instead. Okay. And as if by magic, my chart will update and there's my customer names. Okay. Apologies for the Star Wars theme. I originally did this demo on May the 4th back in the day. Okay. So now we've got our splits. Let's start adding some more. So Control-C, Control-V to copy and paste this chart, drag it down the screen here, and I'm just going to swap it out. So I'm not going to do it by customer. This chart I want to swap out and do by product. And there we've got the labels. And the beauty of Power BI, everything slices and filters everything. So if I click on lightsabers, the chart above will now filter to show me which individuals have been selling lightsabers. How about the Wookiee hair clippers? Okay, what about Han? What's he been selling? If I click on Han, the data below will filter, just lightsabers. So you can see this interactivity is pretty awesome. Okay, you can then add things like, I just want to see data for a particular year, so I'm going to add a slicer. So this is a slicer. I'm going to add that for calendar year. Okay, I can put that up here. And then I can even do crazy things like double click on the canvas here and even start just writing in what I want my chart to be. So if I want sales amount, there we go, sales amount by month. It actually does it for you, which is pretty crazy. You can even say it as pi, okay? But please don't do that. Okay. Let's get rid of the pi. So if that's not impressive, then check this out. See, there's a dip for November. I can right click on this dip and say analyze, explain the decrease. And then the algorithms run over your data and they try and explain what's caused this dip using waterfall charts and other visualizations. And some of these aren't very helpful. Others are great. So let's say, I don't know, this one. Okay, this is my customer codes. So I'm going to say I like that. And I'm going to add it into my report. And then I can even just edit this so I can replace the customer code over here with the customer name. And here I can see a massive drop off from sales to Yoda, but actually a little increase for sales to Jabba the Hutt. Then you can enrich your reports even further with things like tooltips. And now with this set up, when the users come along and they hover over the visual, it just displays the information they need. Then you can do stuff like maps. And be able to click on different bars, and your map will then zoom in to where people are. And then there's even visuals like the decomposition tree, which is really where this starts to turn into an analysis tool to help you analyze the data rather than just presenting what's happened. You can expand this out and say what's given me my highest value in sales. And again, the algorithms run over your data, and it's actually the good guys giving us most of our sales. So where in the good guys is the highest value coming from? And you can just branch out further and further with these sorts of visuals, and you can really get a good understanding of your data. And finally, one thing you really need to start to do is write measures and calculations. So measures is the name for calculations in Power BI. And you can easily do things like year-to-date sales, for example. So let me just write a quick measure. I'll go in here, right-click on my sales by month, new measure. These measures are written in a language called DAX. It stands for Data Analysis Expressions. This is probably the hardest piece of learning Power BI. There's all sorts of elements. There's the transforming data to get started. There's joining your data together in that sort of model view. Then there's DAX calculations. That third piece, the DAX calculations, is what everybody takes the longest to learn and certainly long to master. But then there are some really useful, helpful functions, such as if I want to do sales YTD, so for sales year to date, there is a total YTD function. Okay, and I can just simply do the sum of my, if I start typing amount, there we go. Just want to add that up for my calendar table dates. Like I say, this isn't a tutorial, this is just an overview of these sorts of concepts. And then I'll format it as a currency symbol with no decimals. And there we can see our sales year-to-date figures. Right, we've built our report. We're ready to publish it and share it with people. So once you click publish, you get presented with a list of workspaces. The very first time it'll just be my workspace because you haven't set up any other workspaces. But once you do set up some other workspaces, then they're available to you. So I'm going to go demo, pick select, and this data is now being pushed to powerbi.com, where I can then share it with other colleagues. I can now open that up by clicking on this little link, and it'll now take me to the browser where I can then share the report with whoever I want to share it with. So then here it is, sitting in the cloud, ready for anybody to interact with it that I want to share this with. So there's a share button. I'm not going to go into all the different options here. But you can even connect to this data now with Analyze in Excel. So let me show you this. So as well as just sharing this report so that people have got access to interact with it, you can set up scheduled refreshes so that it automatically updates. It's pretty awesome. So if I go here to this file, I just did the Analyze in Excel, I can open this file. I will now have a connection to that single source of data sitting in the cloud that's powering this report. So we don't have different versions of things. And a recent feature is that I can even publish this Excel file back up to the Power BI workspace to give people the ability to interact with the Excel file and do their own little bit of slicing and dicing. That feature is brand new and slowly rolling out currently. And now I have access to all my data inside this Excel file. So here's another little measure I wrote earlier. So sales dollars. So I can just put that in. You really should write measures for everything. You know, that you could use sales amount, but please write measures. A topic for another time. So there's my sales dollar. I want to show that by month in my rows. There we go, running all the way to April. And let's even see customer in the columns. Perfect. Now, check this out. We can go back to our data. It ran to April. Okay, so my Excel file runs to April, and I just tweaked my report in the service. That runs to April here, okay, just for the financial year 2018. Okay, so I am going to go to my folder here, copy this May data, add it to my folder. Or let's say there's some new data being added to your SQL database or whatever it might be for the source. Okay, we then go into our desktop file, and there's lots of different ways of setting this up. You can even set this up to happen automatically, but I'm going to do it manually. I click the refresh button. So here it goes. It's going off, grabbing the data, pulling it in from my supporting tables, plus the sales by month folder, and it's just grabbing the files in. And we're done. And then we check our visuals out. Notice we've just added May, so here it comes. And hey presto, we have May data. Right, we then publish this. And essentially we save over the top of the existing report. It'll ask me, do I want to replace? Do you want to replace it? Yes. This means that we've got one spot that everybody knows to go to consume the latest data, rather than versions of files being sent around all the time. Right, so once that's done, I can now go into my browser and just refresh it. And there's May, and go to my Excel file. I'm down to April down here. Right click, refresh this. And there's my May data. So one source of truth. Now there's so much more to Power BI. The demo is just a demo. It's always harder than this. Your data's always messier, but the tools are there to allow you to do this sort of stuff that now takes days, weeks, months, rather than months and years. And rather than teams of people having to be involved in this, one individual can do it all, start to finish. Okay, so the PowerBI.com service has data flows, it has deployment pipelines, it has all sorts of admin features, control over the data. There's so much to it that I'm just scratching the surface and giving you a taste of what Power BI is about in a general, simple and basic way. But I hope you find that useful. I hope it gives you a taste of what Power BI is about and what it can do and why you would use it. And if you like this video and you want to support this channel, please subscribe, please like, and more importantly, please share. Let people know that this stuff is around and available. So thanks for watching, and I will catch you later.